Sometimes what happens with some stocks you own because you're actually owning the company is the companies might have some good news, but then all of a sudden the stock price goes down, maybe even down quite a bit. It's like, well, how can a company have like maybe a good earnings announcement and some good things to report, and yet your stock price goes down? Why is that? And that happens sometimes. Well, sometimes it might be they're announcing some good news or announcing good earnings during just a period when the whole market is going down. There's something happening in the global economy or maybe in a local economy that's driving the whole market down lower. So even though they might have good news, they're going down as far as their stock price. Hopefully, they're not going down as fast as the rest of the market. So sometimes it can be a bigger global type thing or a more bigger as far as a market type thing. But sometimes the company has good news, everything looks good, and their stock still goes down, and it's not related to the market or anything else. It's really related to that specific company. And usually it's something that they've said in their earnings announcement or something that they've said with all this good news that might cause some nervousness or fear among investors as far as what the future looks like. Because remember, stocks are all about the future. You're buying a stock with the idea that the stock price will go up. You're investing in a company with the idea that the company is going to continue to grow and improve. And the way they grow and improve is by growing earnings and thus growing their value and growing their stock price. So sometimes when they say we have good earnings, we had good recent earnings, good past earnings over the last quarter, well, that's past news. But then they say something about the future, well, that can cause some consternation sometimes or some fear or uncertainty or doubt among the stockholders that are out there. Let's take a look at a classic example. It happens to be with Facebook. Facebook's got lots of good classic examples in a lot of different ways. So here's a good classic example with Facebook to kind of understand why a stock might go down on good news, and you can kind of use this to help yourself to understand maybe some stocks that you're invested in, why that can happen, and what to do next about that. And as we look at this case study with Facebook, it's way in the past, but we can give us an idea of kind of what can happen as far as with earnings calls or with good news. Even it's going to sound like some great news with Facebook here, and yet their earnings went down. So back on October 30th of 2013, so a long time ago, you think about Facebook, and they're growing a growth company, and they easily beat their earning estimates, right? So far they're having an earnings call, and they're saying, hey, we crushed it. We beat our earnings estimates. Things look great. And they actually were able to show and demonstrate how they were beginning to profit from mobile search and people using mobile devices. And you think about that with Facebook, and you think about how now, years later, since 2013, how important mobile and mobile technology is. The fact that Facebook is starting to show earnings and beginning to profit from mobile back in 2013 in comparison to what ended up happening in the future, that sounds like great, like perfect. The stock should go up. And what happened? Well, the stock declined for 10 straight days. I was like, well, wait a minute, we beat our earnings, doing some good stuff and some new technologies and some new things that are advancing, particularly that is very, very important to Facebook, which is mobile and mobile search. How can the stock decline 10 straight days? What happened? And what happened was they had all this good news, all this great news, really, and if it was just that, it would be like their stock probably would have gone up, maybe even significantly. But Facebook also shared, in full disclosure, which is great that they did, but they shared that and admitted that younger users, especially teenagers, were not using the service as much as they used to. So think about this from an investor who's looking for long-term growth of a company, and Facebook has now come out and said to you, you know what? Teenagers, which are a very actually important part of Facebook, certainly Facebook's growth and beginnings from teenagers and college students is founded under the idea of social media and social sharing at Harvard. I mean, that core group, they're now admitting that, like, hey, you know, those younger users, especially teens, they're not using us as much as they used to. And what do we know from social media sites? That, you know, a lot of those early adopters are young people, and now if they're moving off Facebook, well, what are they moving to? Are they moving to something else? Snapchat, Instagram, who knows what else? Google Plus, what are they moving towards? And could that be a real problem for Facebook if they're losing that teenage and that younger audience? And so people got scared about that. They're like, wow, that's great news for Facebook, but my gosh, if they can't grow their user base from the young people or whatever, then they're going to be like MySpace and go out of business maybe, or this is a catastrophe. And so people got scared, and the stock declined for 10 straight days. So they lost sight of the past news of, hey, earnings are good, and even some of the future news, which looked great, which is the profitability for mobile technology, and got all wrapped around a real core part of the business, which is good to get wrapped around, a core part of the business, which was which is younger users in Facebook and not using it. So that's what happened as far as for Facebook, and their stock declined, even though they had good earnings and this good mobile search thing. And that can happen into a lot of companies in a lot of different industries. Maybe it's a pharmaceutical company that has a great earnings announcement and everything's going good, but maybe a new drug that's in their pipeline fails some clinical trial. You want to see a pharmaceutical stock go down? Hear about things about failed clinical trials will drive a pharmaceutical stock down pretty quickly. Or something that's related to consumption or changing demographics or changing patterns of purchasing and buying behaviors of their main constituents or their core customers. Things along those lines, or new competitors or new things that are happening, new technology that might be assisting or not assisting, maybe causing some challenges within the marketplace. All these things are related to business, right? You're investing in a business. So the Facebook example was like, hey, we've got a core customer base that's not using us much. Think about that as any other business that has a core customer base that's not using them as much or buying as much from them. And you can see where the stock could go down. So the key part of all this is, so when you have good news and stock still goes down, try to figure out, and usually analysts, and there'll be papers and things written about what is happening, and figure out, well, why is the stock going down? And then you make a decision as far as do you want to continue to be invested in that stock, or do you want to be like the others maybe and get out quickly? It might be an opportunity to cut your losses, so to speak. If you're looking at Facebook, you might say, and maybe how it turned out is like, okay, we're losing our core customer, but there's still so much growth in different markets in the world, maybe growing with older people, maybe they'll be adding new features that may capture back some of those young people again. And by the way, that whole thing in mobile looks great, and in fact, they're earning money is terrific too, so maybe I stick it out. That's one way to look at it, and you would have been rewarded for that. But another way would be like, hey, it's going down. I got to get off the ship before it totally sinks. So when you see these things happen, just analyze it, use your fundamentals, and use what's going on, and think about, when I invest in this stock, and the reasons I invest in the stock, is it still on that same trajectory? Is it still doing the things I want to do, or is something fundamentally changed with the company? Is the company moving in a completely different direction? And that might mean, hey, it's time to get out of this investment and into a new one. But certainly it's frustrating when there's lots of good news and you hear things like, XYZ company beats its earnings estimate, and then it goes down, the stock price goes down 10%. Probably is something that's hidden underneath that they shared with the world.